All right, good morning. This is Rob Almeida from gCaptain, and I have here in front of us, this is Kalee Thompson, author of The Deadliest Sea, which is a story about a fishing vessel, Alaska Ranger, that went down in the Bering Sea a few years ago. It's just an amazing book. I read it recently, and just had to get Kalee up here to talk with us a little bit about it. So Kalee, why don't you give us a little bit of background about the story? Tell our viewers what actually happened here, and don't give out all the details, but give us a little background about what the story is all about.
Sure. Well, the story is about the fishing trawler Alaska Ranger. It sank in the Bering Sea in March of 2008. And this was a large fishing boat. It was a 200-foot boat with 47 people on board, and started taking on water in the middle of the night. And from there, the sort of drama, true life survival story began. The crew started attempting to abandon ship, and quite a few things went wrong. The Coast Guard ended up carrying out an incredible rescue that, in terms of the number of people individually airlifted from the water, was unprecedented in Coast Guard history.
How did you hear about the story to begin with, or what prompted you to write this book?
Well, I normally work as a magazine writer. This is my first book. And so actually what happened was I was assigned to write a story for Popular Mechanics magazine about first responders. And so I was working on that magazine piece, and I wanted to include a helicopter rescue team, and I had learned quite a bit about the Coast Guard and their rescue swimmers and sort of that whole world. But I was having a hard time finding really an exciting recent example of a rescue at sea. I kept reading about, someone had their appendix, burst appendix on a cruise ship or something like that. That wasn't the type of thing I was looking for. And then it was just sort of chance that this incident with the Alaska Ranger occurred during the time that I was researching that story. So I ended up writing a magazine story just about the Alaska Ranger, and it was in the July 2008 issue of Popular Mechanics.
Okay. After reading it, I thought that you came from a maritime background, or you maybe were like prior Coast Guard or something. I mean, the amount of research that you put into it was apparent. I mean, you definitely put a lot of time into it. I guess how receptive was the Coast Guard or the fishing company to your inquiries? And I mean, was it? How did you go about the process? I mean, it was just amazing book. You put so much effort into it. It was very apparent.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a big compliment. Thanks so much. And I would say when I first started out, I was, there were I felt a little intimidated because I didn't have that maritime background. I did grow up on a lake around boats, and, I know how to drive a boat. So I don't know, maybe that gave me a tiny bit of background knowledge. Right. But for the most part, I was really starting from scratch. I certainly didn't know anything about the commercial fishing industry. I didn't know very much about the Coast Guard. I never had any friends who were in the Coast Guard or anything like that. So I didn't know what to expect. And in a way, I think in the end that was an advantage, because I didn't really have any preconceived ideas about what this story was going to be all about when I realized that this boat sank. And it wasn't really until I got deep into the research that I realized, actually this type of event is not as rare as it would seem to be. I mean, it is rare to have a boat of that size, a 200-foot fishing boat, sink out from under its crew. But one of the things that I ended up finding so fascinating were sort of the safety trends in the fishing industry. I ended up discovering that compared to other industries, it's very unregulated. It has a very high fatality rate. Almost every year, commercial fishing is per capita the deadliest job in the United States. And when I sort of started looking into why that was, one of the things that I found was that the majority of people who are dying out there are dying because their boat is sinking out from under them. There's so many unseaworthy ships out there, and that was the case, with the Alaska Ranger. So to me, it really was a completely preventable tragedy.
Right. What were some of the, the key lessons learned that you? I mean, there were some really obvious ones in the book, but I mean, what do you think are some of the key things that you found, lessons learned wise, that could be shared with the industry?
Well, I guess take good care of your ship, and actually just this past fall, there were new regulations passed after years and years of struggle on the part of safety advocates that, in theory, will start bringing the commercial fishing fleet up to the same standards as other fleets. It's going to take at least a decade, really, for I think the results of that to become widespread. But it's a huge, step in the right direction. But I think even just on an individual level, I mean, I sort of have a science background in the sense that I've worked as a science journalist. I was an editor at Popular Science magazine. So I think, came to it with a sort of a scientific perspective. And I think that's where a lot of the most interesting reporting came in, because a lot of people think, okay, a ship sinks. There's a very quick reaction to say, oh, it was an act of God. It was fate.
Right.
The sea took him, to sort of use this way of talking about it as if it were inevitable, as if there was something that you could do to prevent that situation. And of course, when families are grieving, that kind of language can be comforting, and that way of thinking about it can be comforting. But if you're able to take a step back, divorce yourself from the individual tragedies, and just kind of look in a scientific way, what actually happened to these people? How did they die? Who, was wearing a life jacket? Who wasn't wearing a life jacket? Who had a survival suit that fit them? Who had a survival suit that didn't fit them? Who had a light
who had a survival suit that didn't have holes in it? Yeah.
All these little... all these little things, these little steps toward safety can really actually make a big difference in whether people live or die. Even sort of the knowledge that comes with training, that, you fall overboard on a ship. A lot of people think, and this doesn't matter if you're, on a commercial fishing boat, or if you're on, your 15-foot fishing boat out in the middle of a lake in October. A lot of people think, I'm in the water, I'm dead. I don't have a life jacket. I don't have anything near me. But the reality is, it takes usually about an hour before anyone is going to pass out from hypothermia. People actually have more time than they think they do to try to save themselves, to sort of make the smart decisions that can save their lives. So that was another thing that I sort of just became interested in, was sort of that science of survival. What goes into the training? What kind of steps can people make to, help to save their own life if they're ever in that type of situation?
Oh, definitely. Well, great. Yeah, I think a lot of really good points were made, and I think it's a very worthwhile book to read. One of the things that when I was reading it was just like you said, you got to really look at some of the factors that contributed to the people that died, and it really is every accident is preventable, and there's just a lot of really good lessons learned. I think you can gain by reading your book and by just paying attention and believing that every accident is preventable, as long as you look at some of the contributing factors to previous accidents. So really good stuff. What's next for you? Any new books on the way, or any other?
I'm not working on a new book project yet, but I'm always kind of thinking of things. I'm back to doing magazine work, so I actually had a story in a couple months ago in the June issue of Popular Mechanics that was called "When the First Responder Is You," and it was sort of a roundup story about how to react in different types of emergency situations. If you sort of written from the perspective, you are not a professional first responder, but what should you do if you find yourself the first on the scene in various types of emergencies? So, there's obviously a lot of similarities there with the type of reporting that I was doing for the book. I'm working on, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'm working on a new story now that's related to policing. So that's in the last couple of weeks, I've had the chance to do some ride-alongs with the LAPD and a couple other places. So that's been pretty interesting. Cool. When I was reporting Deadliest Sea, I got to spend a lot of time with the Coast Guard, and that was definitely the most fun part of reporting the book. Just being up there in Alaska and getting to, go out on the aircraft. And I spent about a week on St. Paul Island, which is by far the most remote place I'd ever been in my life. I got to go out on the Coast Guard Cutter Monroe, which just had a fantastic crew, and it was really fascinating
Still there?
Style it's like for those. I mean, really, they're kids. You know, most of the half the crew on that ship was probably 19, 20, 21 years old. So
right.
That was just interesting for me, not coming from that world.
For sure, for sure. Well, great. Well, it's all we have time for today. But Kalee, really appreciate you chatting with us today, and for those gCaptain readers who were still watching, appreciate you hanging in there. And definitely check out her book. It's The Deadliest Sea by Kalee Thompson. You will definitely enjoy it. Very well written, very well researched. And Kalee, hopefully we'll meet up with you soon, and keep us posted on the
Great.
on the
Thanks so
follow-up.
much, and it's available in paperback now. So
excellent.
Get there.
All right, thanks, Kalee.
Okay, thanks.